Today, we're going to talk about place value. So place value is one of those things that you should learn very early on in life, primary school, elementary school, but along the way, it's not really brought up a lot, and teachers will usually just assume it's something that you carry on. But even as my time as a high school teacher, I do find value that it's reviewed and it's very powerful to understand exactly what it means to look at a number with different digits in different places. So with that, let's look at a number. So let's say you have the value 5,709.34. So this number has a total of 6 digits. 4 of them are on the left side of the decimal, and 2 of them are on the right side of the decimal. So there's already a problem there for a lot of students who aren't sure what a decimal truly means. But let's break this up into what each digit actually represents. So we call this first digit in my number, this 5, this is called the thousands place. Thousands. And what the 5 truly represents is the number 5,000. And then we have the 7, which is in the hundreds place. And that truly represents the number 700. Now, what's probably something that bothers a lot of my students is when you have a 0, what does that even represent? Because there's no whole number there. So this 0 represents your tens. But what does it mean to have 0 tens? Well, it literally means you have no tens, so you could think of this as just 0, 0. Which, if that's confusing, just think of it as you don't have any tens to add. So you could just think of that as, well, you have no tens. So in this case, no tens. And then the 9, pick a fun color here, do the brown. This 9 is called the ones place, and by having a 9 in that digits place, that just means you have 9, a value of 9. So if I just wanted to separate the number 5,709 into its place values, you could think of just that number. I'll rewrite it here. You could just think of that number as, so 5,709. We'll get to the 0.34 in a moment, but this would be the equivalent number as 5,000s plus 700s plus no tens, but then plus 9 ones. And if you add that all together, the sum of this should equal 5,709. Now the 0.34 though, how do we bring that into the problem? Well, depending on where you are in mathematics already, some people just know decimals as decimals, but decimals also represent fractions. So let's bring the 5,709 along with the 0.34 and talk about what that means as a whole number, or an entire number, I should say, not a whole number. So let's rewrite my number, 5,709 and that was 34. So what this decimal represents is it's kind of like the border between whole value and part value. So since the 0.34 is on the right side of the decimal, they have different names, right? So we call the first digit on the left, we call that the ones, right? This one's called the ones, the 9 is the ones, and then after that to the left is the tens and the hundreds and the thousands. So ones, tens, hundreds, thousands means your number, your whole value is getting larger. But on the right side of the decimal place, they're getting smaller. So we have different names for them. So the 0.3 is called our tenths place. And that means we have 0.3 as that value, 0.3, 3 tenths. And then the 4, that's in the hundredths place because it's 2 decimal places, but on the right side, hundredths. And that would be 0.04. So if you separate the values out, The first decimal place on the right is called tenths, and that's 1 decimal place to the right. And the hundredths, that digit by itself, is 2 decimal places to the right. So to add to that, if you're a student who already has some fractional knowledge, like you've already messed with fractions, what you should also know is that tenths and hundredths are equivalent names for fractions, not just decimal places. So tenths, you can think of them as a fraction of over 10, and hundredths, you could think of them as a fraction of over 100. And the value of those fractions, or in the numerator, right, in the top, is the same value as the digit. So 0.3 is actually 3/10 as a fraction as well. And in hundredths, we could write that as 4 over 100. And yes, we could simplify that value, but that'll be for another video, simplifying fractions. We will not worry about that right now. So if we were to put this all together now, and I wanted to rewrite 5,709.34 as all of its separated place values, let me now write this as a single expression of a sum. This would be written as 5,000 plus 700 plus no 10, so we won't write a value for the tens place, plus 9 ones, and that's everything on the left side of the decimal place, and they're all whole values. And then when we go to the right side of the decimal places, or the right side of the decimal place, now we're talking about parts of numbers or pieces of numbers. So these will be my tenths and hundredths place that I wrote. So this would be, if we wanted to write as a decimal, this would be 0.3. And then my hundredths place, we'd write plus 0.04. And that would make the whole number, the entire number, I should say. It's not a whole number, it's an entire number. 5,709 is equivalent to 5,000 plus 700 plus 9, and 0.34 is equivalent to 3/10 plus 4/100. And again, just to add this before we end here, I could have also written this as plus 3/10 and plus 4 over 100, 4/100. So I know that might not cover everything that you remember learning when you did place value, but this could be a nice refresher for anyone who looks at numbers that they have to mess with in their high school or middle school courses, and they just want to make sure they understand what it means to talk about different places, such as the tens place versus the tenths place, or the hundredths place versus the hundredths place.